The coronavirus, which has affected the whole world, undoubtedly led us to the obligation to rearrange our habits and lives. Throughout this process, Turkey has been a model country, leading the way in providing assistance to its citizens as well as in providing international aid. While providing logistical support to many countries, Turkey has also supported Turkish citizens living abroad. Under the presidency of the Republic of Turkey, the Directorate of Communications, as part of the project explaining the model of Turkey in the fight against COVID-19, will get ambassadors' evaluations related to the activities in the process of pandemic in Turkey. Ambassador Sir Dominick Chilcott, thanks for being with us.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You were in Turkey during the pandemic that has swept the world. What do you think were the positive sides, positive aspects and advantages Turkey has had in its response?
Okay, I think two advantages come to mind immediately. One is you have a relatively young population, and we know that the older you are, the more dangerous COVID is if you catch it. And the second is you have a pretty modern, comprehensive health system. We have modern hospitals in most of your big cities. And I think having invested so much in the health service here has really proved its worth in the time of the pandemic. I think overall the performance in Turkey is very good, because if you look at the numbers of people who've died, and if we look at the numbers of excess deaths and the numbers of people in hospital and the recovery of people from hospital, the data in Turkey compares very favourably with a lot of other countries. If you look at my own country, the United Kingdom, our hospitals came under greater pressure twice in the last year than has been the case in Turkey. And of course, very sadly, the overall number of people who've died with COVID in the UK is a lot higher than in Turkey.
Yes, sir. In a time like this, in a time of crisis, leadership is really important. And Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan ensured that very serious measures have been taken very quickly in order to overcome this crisis with the least possible damage. How quickly have the current measures taken in your own country, and how is the situation right now? How do you see it, we wondered?
Yeah. Well, there's a big debate back in the UK about whether we acted as quickly as we could have done. But to be fair to the government, they were facing an unprecedented situation. There was no rule book to follow, and they took the steps on the advice of the scientists who were advising the government and on that timetable. So I think that, when you look back on it, we'll be able to argue, could something have happened earlier or later, or could we have imposed stricter measures at the beginning, or should we have relaxed a bit later? But I think that's an argument for another time when things have calmed down. Now what you have to say is I think the British government have done some things very well. I think our response to the crisis on a global scale has been very generous. We've committed over $1.5 billion of British money to support the global response, including the response in the least rich, least developed countries around the world. And I think that's something to be proud of. And then on the vaccination side, we have been one of the first countries to pursue an aggressive vaccination policy at home. And we took certain risks maybe in deciding to invest in vaccines before they were proved, but actually it's a policy that's paid off, that we've got better access to vaccines now than many other European countries, and our program is more developed than theirs is. So I think at the latest count we're about 21 million of my compatriots in the UK have now been vaccinated, and that's a pretty good figure too. So I think there are some things to be pleased about, and then things that we want to look back on and examine when the time is right to do so.
Yeah, I see. I think the biggest challenge is the uncertainty it brings.
You're absolutely right. I think nobody had dealt with a pandemic like this as governments in the modern era before. And we were being surprised all the time by the vaccine, how quickly it's mutated, how quickly it's spread. I happened to be back in the UK when we realized that we had something very serious happening across the world. And I'd gone back for 1 week's holiday, and the difference in the UK from the beginning of the week to the end of the week was quite remarkable, because that was the week the government introduced all the restrictions. No, you're right. I think the uncertainty about it continues to be difficult. We have the so-called English variant that we're dealing with, B117, and that's proved to be much, much more contagious than the original versions of the virus, and that's presented a new challenge to governments. So, and who knows what the next variant might be like. So we have to stay on our toes, and we have to live with a degree of uncertainty at the moment.
Yeah, of course. And when it comes to treatment, as you know, in Turkey, treatment is free. COVID-19 treatment is free, both for Turkish citizens and foreign citizens as well. Regarding this, I wonder, did you have a chance to inform British citizens living in Turkey, and how is the treatment process progressing in your own country?
Yeah. Well, we don't have a very big community of British people in Turkey. I mean, it's a few tens of thousands. And often they're retired people who live on the coast in places like Kalkan and Kaş and Kuşadası, and I'm sure have a lovely retirement. I can't think of anywhere nicer to be.
Lovely place to be.
Lovely, exactly. Even in a pandemic, it's a lovely place to be, I'm sure. So we are in touch with our community, and we have been giving them regular updates on the situation in Turkey and what, as British people resident in Turkey, they can do in order to be able to access the Turkish health system. And I hope those messages have been received well and have been helpful to the community. We also have a very large number of Britons who come here normally on holiday every year. And we've wanted to provide them with advice before they came. And to be helpful to them, but they're in a different position because they're here for a week or 2 weeks and then they go back home in the normal scheme of things. But I think that kind of communication, which has been very much in line with what the Turkish government has been doing, has worked quite well. And I'm sorry, there was something else in your question. I've forgotten now. Was that enough? Was that enough?
I was exactly asking about that. Yeah. So maybe one of the most pressing issues, restrictions. So there were restrictions in Turkey, as in the whole world, because of the pandemic. Parks, restaurants, cafes, like public places, theaters, all social places were closed from time to time. I wonder what was the thing you missed the most, like either in Turkey or in your own country. What was that?
Gosh, well, of course, I'm sure we all missed a lot of different things. There were a lot of things I missed. I miss the thought that I could get on a plane and nip back home and see my family, and I have an elderly mother, that sort of, who I've only seen for one day in the last year and a bit now, so it's quite a long time. I think living in Turkey, one of the great pleasures as a foreigner is to be able to travel around the country and find new places, explore ancient sites, and that's obviously been more difficult in the pandemic. I've missed the freedom to get out and about at weekends. I mean, we understand why we have curfews at weekends, but it's true to say that, when you're in Ankara, it's always been nice to get in the car and drive away and have a picnic somewhere, or, go and see Gordion, or go to Sivrihisar, or, a place nearby, Safranbolu or something, and spend the day there. And of course, that's not possible in the pandemic. So I think travel, I miss the traveling around. And then, of course, you miss socializing with, people outside your bubble, your friends. We have many friends in Turkey. We're very lucky, and many friends in the diplomatic corps. And, of course, all that social activity stopped because of the pandemic. I like going to the cinema here. I like going to the theatre occasionally when I can understand the plays. And, that activity's gone. And then, Turkish cuisine and those long evenings in Turkish restaurants when you choose half a dozen meze and then you have a nice piece of fish and whatever, and you put the world to rights. That's all stopped too. So I think, the quality of our lives generally. I mean, if I can say this on the program, I used to go down occasionally to watch Fenerbahce play in the UKs Stadium.
You support Fenerbahce?
I do support Fenerbahce, and and I haven't been able to do that all season. There's been no football to go and see. I miss live sport very much too. Anyway, so there are lots of things.
And you already talk about vaccines and vaccination, but I want to also ask a couple of questions about it. What do you think about all the vaccines developed? And first of all, did you get your own vaccine? And what is your advice to your citizens when it comes to vaccination? And as you know, also Turkey is at the forefront of most of the countries when it comes to vaccination. All healthcare workers and 95% of senior age groups have been vaccinated so far. So what is the situation in UK? You already mentioned that a little bit, but what is the situation in the UK when it comes to vaccination, and how do you see the situation in Turkey?
Well, I haven't had the vaccine yet, but I hope I'll have a jab in the next few weeks. As for the situation in the UK, I mean, our view is that there needs to be lots of vaccines made, lots of different vaccines all over the world, in order to be able to vaccinate the global population of more than 8 billion people. So, you know, we're delighted to find that countries like Russia and China and, you know, other European countries, United States, and no doubt there are plenty more who are working on vaccines and have successfully produced vaccines, because we can't have too many, really. As for our policy in the UK, as I said a little earlier, we were a bit ahead of many other countries. We've now authorised 3 different vaccines in the UK, the Moderna vaccine, the AstraZeneca-Oxford vaccine, and the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. And we have offered a vaccine to everybody now over 70 who has an underlying, and everybody who has an underlying health condition that affects their immunity system. And we've offered it to all healthcare workers and everybody who works in these homes for elderly people as well. So they're all done, or those that want to have a vaccine have been offered one. And now we're moving down the age groups, and we're beginning to offer it to everybody over 60. And the next step will be to offer it to everyone over 50. And we hope the Prime Minister, our British Prime Minister, has said that every adult should have been offered a vaccine before, I think it's July, so before the beginning of the summer, or the beginning of the summer. And that's quite an achievement. So, you know, that is the way out of this pandemic for us all, is that we have to develop immunity to the virus. It's not going to go away, and that immunity will come through vaccination. And, you know, we encourage everybody in the UK, around the world, to get themselves vaccinated. And the fact that you've got a good supply of vaccine coming from China is encouraging. I mean, I can't comment on the efficacy of the vaccine because we don't know the data and it's not been examined in the UK. But certainly the ones that we've looked at in the UK, they've proved to be very effective, both in preventing transmission, but most importantly, perhaps, in preventing hospitalization, serious illness and death. Because if we can reduce the effect of the coronavirus to something similar to having a common cold or maybe a mild bout of flu, then it won't be a problem for our societies. We won't get rid of it, as I say, but you know, with a bit of luck, if it's not sending people to hospital seriously ill, then that would have made all the difference.
Yeah, of course. And parents see the most positive aspect of the pandemic as having a chance to spend more time with their children or their family, loved ones. How about you, sir? Is your family here? Have you had time to spend more time with them? How did it go?
Well, it's a good question. I can see what you mean, actually. I think there must be parents who've enjoyed having their children around. Of course, our situation is a bit different because we're living as diplomats overseas. So our children are all, 3 of them are in the UK and 1 lives in Moscow. But actually, as it happens, the one in Moscow has come to spend the lockdown with us here in Turkey. So we have got one of our children living with us, which is absolutely delightful. So yes, I can quite understand that. But, you know, as this job, and one of the downsides of a job, which I think otherwise is an extremely privileged life and a lovely career to have, is that you are separated from your family more than, you know, than if one was doing a different sort of job in your home country. And because international travel is much more difficult during the time of pandemic, actually the sense of separation is greater in the pandemic. And I think that's one of the difficulties for diplomats posted overseas.
Happy for you, sir, so you had to spend some time with your...
That's been nice with our son.
Here's my final question. I want to ask, what are your feelings that you want to share with either Turkish citizens or British citizens living in Turkey? What do you want them specifically pay attention to in this process, in a time of crisis and in this time of pandemic?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the same in the UK as it is in Turkey, is that this is a real problem. It's not fake news. And we must take seriously what the scientists tell us about the virus and also about vaccines and the proper way to get treatment. And the rules on social distancing, I mean, we're a good 2 meters apart doing this interview. We've taken our masks off so we can talk more easily, but we're keeping a respectable distance. And I think it's very important that everybody complies with the rules on hygiene, on social distancing, on mask wearing, on not gathering in large groups when you shouldn't, and on maintaining a behaviour that reduces to a minimum the risks of transmitting the virus. I feel some sympathy for young people who are rarely seriously ill from the virus, but whose lives in many ways are really restricted at the moment. But they must understand that they are sacrificing a year of their social life and other things in order to protect their parents and their elderly relatives and that generation who would be at risk if we just let the virus loose to kind of transmit itself through the whole of society. So my message to people here, to the British people here, to people living in the UK is the same message really, is take this seriously, listen to what the scientists are saying and follow the rules set out by the governments who have all of our best interests at heart.
Mr. Ambassador, it was a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Not at all. It's a great pleasure talking to you.
We discussed Turkey's effective fight against COVID-19 with British Ambassador Sir Dominick Chilcott. I would like to thank him for his sincere answers.
Pleasure.